Hello! I just discovered something that I never thought would happen. There's going to be a new Brigandine game for the Switch, released in the West. If you don't know what Brigandine is, I don't blame you. It's for the PlayStation 1, it's obscure, and well, you know what? Why don't I just explain the whole thing right now? Brigandine is a grand strategy game where you use the resources from provinces to summon monsters that fight for you. Kingdom management is kept to a minimum. What matters is making sure your borders are defended and you attack with the right mix of units for the terrain and the opposition that you're going to encounter. Combat-wise, Brigandine is centered on generals called Rune Knights and the monsters they bring into battle. Both of these are units that can gain levels, change class, all that fun stuff. But when monsters are killed, they're gone for good. And while high-level units are strong, they can still be killed by low-level ones if you're not careful. Rune Knights are not killed off for good, but if they're defeated, all of their monsters retreat with them. Also, they're wounded and out of action for a while on this strategic map. As far as monster variety goes, it's pretty good. You got your big expensive bruisers, flankers, supports, some quirky units, some units that are very cost effective but have weaknesses, some that start out weak but gain strong abilities if you level them up and promote them, and there's some real substance in there. Putting together monster armies was a lot of fun for me when I first played the game. So far that doesn't sound too bad, right? But the original game bounced off of people for several reasons, but the biggest one is that it was unpolished. Anytime units fought each other, you got this really goofy 3D battle scene. Both battles and their loading screens took time that added up really fast and made each battle tedious, and you had a lot of battles before you were done with the game. You could turn those battle scenes off, but then all you got were units looking at each other as damage numbers popped up. Brigandine also had the same problem as some other grand strategy games in that the early part of the game was the toughest. Once you leveled up some monsters and picked up the territory and knights to build a bigger army, the rest of the game was pretty much done. What got me hooked on the first Brigandine game, aside from raising monsters, was the fluff. Each kingdom has a lot of personality to it thanks to the conversations and profiles of its starting knights. It's not much by today's standards, but the way these traits shape the way you play the game at the start really sold me on it. Today, I will freely admit that I ignored its flaws a bit too much, though. And then, sometime later, Grand Edition was released. In Japan. I don't blame them for not localizing it. The sales numbers must have been awful. And there was a lot of text and voice work to translate for this one, so really expensive too if they were going to try it. I'm not going to talk too much about the fluff in that one, but they put a lot of work into it. Animated cutscenes, expanded interactions, fun stuff. Gameplay, though. First of all, the experience was smoothed out a lot. The 3D cutscenes are gone. Instead, you get animations on the map that convey everything pretty cleanly. Units and monsters were tweaked a bit. Some exceptional characters get their own unique classes. You got flanking bonuses. But the biggest thing was that Grand Edition added a real goal beyond conquer one of your neighbors and then crush everything. Once you eliminated everyone else on the map, you were given boss encounters. These things are a huge test of how well you built up your units during the normal game. This turns those extravagant endgame monsters from a luxury into a necessity, and forces you to put a lot more thought into how you're going to raise and defend your units over the course of the game. At least, in theory. In practice, you could just spam Meteor Doom and kill everything, but they tried, and I think that effort counts at least a little bit. I'd like to add that if you think the argument of base stats versus growths is heated in Fire Emblem, just imagine what it would be like for this game. Let me explain. Each kingdom starts with Rune Knights of various levels, some really strong and some have a lot of growing to do. The problem is that these young, inexperienced characters have to deal with a game setting where those powerful, experienced guys are all over the place and weak Rune Knights are excellent targets to turn the battle in your favor. Feeding kills to those guys is pretty rough, and Rune Knights grow slow, much slower than monsters. Of course, the other side of it is that upgrading a Rune Knight from weak to even moderate power makes guarding those borders a lot easier. The borders really sort of put a pinch on your manpower. And there are Rune Knights with very strong growth rates, plus you can customize them a lot more, give them abilities from a lot of different classes, that kind of thing. Don't forget though, you're working with a time limit and you can only bring 3 Rune Knights to any particular battle. It's a really thorny issue, though at least there's 2 sides to it in Grand Edition. In the original version, growing low-level Rune Knights was nearly useless because by the time you pull it off, the hard part of the game is in the distant past. The new Brigandine game for the Switch has a demo. I've played around with it a bit. The tutorial isn't bad, I'm glad it's there. The first game didn't explain itself very well, and we can't really expect everyone who tries the new Brigandine to have played the old one. When the game comes out, I'll have to choose the Pirate Kingdom because, as I see it, if you have the chance to pick a Pirate Kingdom over a not Pirate Kingdom, that doesn't even count as a choice. I also noticed some gameplay tweaks here and there. Every kingdom now has a Rune Knight with a unique class, not including the ruler. Some nations didn't have that even in Grand Edition. Some monsters are reskinned and called a new name, but they do the same thing as in the first game. Some monster promotion lines are shortened, there's a couple of new monsters. Dragons now need promotion items for their final forms, which I gotta say that's fair. They're pretty easy to keep alive while you level them up, and they turn into the best monsters in the game. Also, unless I missed something, no one starts with fully promoted monsters. That's not in the player's favor. Often in the older games, the computer nations lost their freebie promoted monsters early, while you could pretty easily keep yours alive, so that was a pretty big advantage when you needed it the most. I don't mind this. I think even Grand Edition needed some more challenge to it. We'll have to see what else has changed when the full game comes out. I don't think I'd go as far as to say you have to go through all the hassle of getting and fan-translating Grand Edition to prepare yourself for the Switch game. It's a good game in its own right, though, and if you're a strategy fan, I think you should at least give it a try. I'd recommend a game guide, though. The game will go a lot more smoothly that way. And that's all I have to say for now. I'll see you later.